All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So it's been a fun day. So I know that I told you at the beginning of the program that we were having a contest with visiting the demo tables and having stars and stickers put on the back of your cards. Is there anyone who has not turned that in to Michaela? No? What? Well, if you haven't, please do so because we will be announcing the winner. So how many of you have heard of a company called Indiegogo? Raise your hand. Oh my God, that's almost all of you. Of the 23 companies that pitched today, I think there was 4 or 5 companies that either have launched a campaign on Indiegogo or about to launch a campaign on Indiegogo. Today, we are lucky, honored, privileged to have the founder of Indiegogo with us today in a fireside chat. Please help me welcome to the stage Danae Ringelmann. Woo-hoo! Thank you, Danae. And also, as our interviewer, please welcome to the stage Jennifer Elias of Silicon Valley Business Journal.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. So thank you for joining us today. So we are limited time. I'm going to try to just race through this. For those of you who don't know, Indiegogo was started in 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really was one of the first crowdfunding sites, and it's become one of the largest, if not the largest, global crowdfunding website. And so Danae here is one of the founders of Indiegogo. So first off, I'm just going to dive right in. Can you tell us about how you kind of started with Indiegogo and made it become from a dream into a reality, starting with your first round of funding and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of say the story for Indiegogo for me started probably when I was a kid without realizing it. I grew up here in San Francisco, actually, and my parents were small business owners, and every dinner table conversation every night was about how to make payroll, how are we going to expand this business, we have to refinance the house, basically it always came back to struggle, and entrepreneurship was really hard, and I became very acutely aware of how hard it was. A lot of the struggles were around funding and capital. So not that I was going to do anything about that. It was after college, I was living in New York, working in finance actually to try to understand how money worked, and got roped into helping some theater producers and filmmakers bring their independent projects to life. And the kind of pivotal moment for me was putting an Arthur Miller play on, which was a play about racial profiling. And this was right after September 11th in New York City, so it was a very hot topic. Thinking this is the perfect time to do this, and I rented out a theater off Broadway, packed a house with an audience, hundreds of people, got actors to volunteer their time, even Richard Dreyfuss volunteered. He's passionate about the project. And got investors there, because that's how you got theater funded. You got investors to witness a night of the play, and they get so excited that they write the big check and turn it into a full-blown production. And everything went perfect except that last moment when the investors said, that was amazing, I loved it, I'm not investing, good luck. Not my thing. Didn't really understand why. So the whole point, that moment kind of came crashing down months of work. Here was all these people, this audience, and these actors who wanted this play to come to life, yet they didn't have the power to make it happen. And so that put me on a path to saying, look, finance sucked for my parents. It sucked for me because despite my finance experience, I still can't help these ideas happen. They're completely dependent on this third-party gatekeeper or person to greenlight it. And so that kind of displaced control was something that kind of really pissed me off, and I wanted to put the power back in the hands of the people to decide which ideas came to life. And that was kind of the aha moment. So that set me on a path. I was drumming up different ideas, finally couldn't stop. I was so sick of hearing myself pitch it to a million people that I just went back to business school to start it, and then met two guys who became my co-founders who themselves were struggling with funding and finance and stuff. And they convinced me, if you really want to democratize access to capital, you have to use the internet. It's this thing out there. Have you heard of it? And this was 2006. And so I clearly had heard of it. I had clearly said it's illegal to do that. There's these things called the SEC laws. But at that point we said, look, let's just prove that the internet is a great ways. Let's put equity aside. that's when we came up with the perks concept and got it out of the gate. The word crowdfunding didn't exist. We had no competition. We were these lone rangers just trying to prove that the internet was a great way to get ideas off the ground. And so the first year we launched a beta within film, because that was like an experience, like I clearly failed many times within film, bringing ideas to life, wanted to fix that. And then within a year we expanded to everything. So businesses, inventors, today we have small businesses like bakeries to, watchmakers to bag makers to drone makers to inventors to solar roadways. Everything is coming to life. And actually now we're in the process of crowdfunding is just a piece of what we do. It's not who we are at all. It's a tactic to help ideas come to life. And we're starting to do more around helping navigate distribution and manufacturing in China and all that kind of stuff.
Great. And as you were trying to scale globally, what were some of the bigger challenges you can remember coming into contact with when you were still young and growing?
Super early. We weren't trying to be a better, faster, cheaper version of anything. We were trying to create a whole new way of bringing ideas to life. And so we didn't have words. We didn't have an industry name. So we had no vocabulary to tell people what we were doing. So that was actually the biggest challenge, was just proving that this concept, it must have been similar to some people kind of, the analogy is when the PDA first came out, like the computer in your pocket, like it had never existed before and people were like really confused. But then once cell phones came out with similar technology, I was like, oh, I get it. It's a PDA with a phone, So it's just, we didn't have the words to explain what we were trying to do. And so there was a lot of the people willing to give us a go were super, had exhausted all other traditional means and been rejected. And we were like the opportunity of last resorts. And I do remember that, like we were kind of seen as, if everything else fails, then fine, use Indiegogo. So that took a while to get over that challenge, because once we started getting more and more success, then we started getting, at least within film world, for example, we started getting talented film people coming to us because they realized actually getting the people involved earlier rather than later is the smarter marketing thing to do. And so now we have like Don Cheadle using Indiegogo to bring his Miles Davis film to life. And now we have General Electric using Indiegogo to bring their future ice makers and other products to life. Ideas that had been sitting in the shelves for years with people not willing to risk their careers to champion an idea that they weren't sure the audience and the market existed for. Now they have Indiegogo to quickly prove that. And so now companies like GE are using Indiegogo to bring their ideas to life.
And you mentioned to me in the green room about how the crowdfunding space is really becoming more of a wild, wild west again. So can you just comment on that a little bit and talk about the current state of crowdfunding? And
So I think, two kind of big things happening that we're seeing in our experience. The first is the equity laws are, so because of success like Indiegogo and crowdfunding in general, that was able to prove that the laws needed to be updated from the SEC laws of the 30s, which basically made it illegal for people to raise equity investments online. So they were, written a few years ago, and they finally were enacted a few weeks ago. So it's kind of the opening of the gates and seeing what's going to work. I think it's Wild West days because I think there's a lot of exploration to be done. Like, I think, is this really something that Main Street wants? Because really what it's doing is it's giving Main Street the same opportunities that Wall Street investors have had forever. And so the question for us that we're asking is, will it take? What kind of interests, what kind of motivations will be at play? Like for us on Indiegogo in the perk-based world, there's 4 reasons people fund. We call them the 4 Ps. People, passion, participation, and perk. You want to support the person, you love you're passionate about the project, you want to participate, it's like the best water cooler talk you could ever buy, and you want the actual perk. Like you want to be part of like making this thing come to life. So when the 5th P gets introduced, profit, it'll be interesting to see what kind of mix shift of motivations happen when people have that opportunity. We found that the ideas that appeal to all 4 Ps do the best. But with the 5th P, will there be ideas that just appeal to profit, or will the ones that do the best appeal to all 5 Ps? So does that mean we have a future landscape where pretty much all ideas are ideas that relate to the ones that get the equity funding are things that are doing good things in the world, not just destroying the world, for example, because they're making a profit, but they're also doing good. So, because that's what matters to people. So it's an interesting landscape ahead to pioneer and figure out. I think there might be a good local play. Like a lot of people aren't willing to put money in Wall Street, and like my mother, she doesn't trust any of it, especially after the crash, but she does trust the people that she knows. And she would put money in Indiegogo, for example. She tried to, she asked, she wants to invest in people that she knows and put her money into things that she believes in, not companies that are destroying the world or things like that. So I think there's a huge opportunity for local businesses to take advantage of it. So we'll see. It's just going to take a couple years. And I think the big area to navigate too is, we had to navigate a lot on the trust and safety side, which is, very classic stuff for any open technology platform where people try to take advantage of the platform in a way it wasn't intended. And we've created algorithms and trust and safety systems to make sure that the site is safe. And we have, fraud way less than 1%. But that's, in the equity world, there'll be just we can take those learnings to it, but there'll just be new things to figure out. So that's the Wild West in that world. And I would say the other Wild West is in this like post-funding world. Like we're back in the position we were 8 years ago, which is we don't have an industry label for what we're doing. We joke around, we're in the entrepreneurship empowerment business or the collaborative entrepreneurship empowerment business because we're getting making funders and backers part of the entrepreneurial journey and making them a part of bringing something to life. And we're empowering entrepreneurs every step of the way, from funding to making to distribution. We're just figuring that out. We just launched a huge partnership with Arrow, which is one of the biggest companies maybe some of you have never heard of, where they're in the business of providing chips and components to a lot of electronics that come out. And due to their size, they've only been able to work with really other big electronics companies. But what they really care about is helping all the upstart entrepreneurs, the hardware startups, bring their ideas to life, because that's where the innovation's happening, and they want to serve them. And so we're partnering to help bring their expertise, their kind of feasibility studies and their R&D assessment expertise and all that kind of stuff, bring those to all of our entrepreneurs so that any first-time entrepreneur, for wherever you're from, no matter what skill set you have, what school you went to, it doesn't matter. If you have an idea, we now connect you with the knowledge and the connections to help you not just raise the money, but now actually make the thing and figure out how to navigate China and manufacturing and all that stuff. So it's an exciting era we're in. We're not crowdfunding anymore. So if anybody has a better term for our industry or for what Indiegogo is doing at least, let me know. All ears.
Well, thanks so much. I think we're going to try to take a couple questions from the audience, if that's correct. If anyone has any pressing questions.
It sounds like you obviously enjoyed the adventure that you launched when you got Indiegogo going. What was the thing that you liked the most about it, though? What gave you the most satisfaction?
I probably think the answer to that question is different at different points in the journey. Like the first time that a campaign happened without any of us touching anybody involved, it was actually 2 reporters out of Africa who had been covering the story of a man by the name of Pastor Marion, who in the Congo is known as the Schindler of the Congo. So it's a very war-torn country, and he was actually hiding people and saving their lives from execution. By doing that, and 2 reporters had been covering this kind of quietly for 10 years, not revealing who he was or anything. And then one day his life came under attack because I think his kidney started to fail. And so what they did is they took matters into their own hands, and they came to Indiegogo, raised the $60,000 they needed to pay to fly him to Nigeria and have the operation and save his life. And all the people who'd been following his story across the globe for all these years all put $5, $10 in and made it happen together. And it happened efficiently, quickly, collaboratively, exactly the way it should have worked and exactly what we had envisioned. And we didn't know the person. It just happened. And that to me was like, it's working. Like it was the first real moment, like this is really, really working. We don't have to fight to make it work. It just worked. So that was awesome. And now I would say just the simple moments of, one of our values at Indiegogo is fearlessness, and what that means to us is turning challenges into opportunities to innovate. And the reason it means that is because that is everything Indiegogo's ever done and stood for. Like every the way finance worked, it was not serving the many, it was serving the few. I mean, look at the country we're in right now, still the 1%, the 99. Like there's a reason why people are angry. It's because our existing system of which ideas happened and which didn't was definitely not fair, and so many, we don't even know how many ideas went unborn because of lack of access to capital and resources and networks and stuff. So, and I think entrepreneurship is just this incredible equalizing, empowering force, creating jobs. It's just an incredible utility for a civilization. So, so fearlessness is like this thing that we just embody every day. And what it means is like every time something bad happens now, or you hit any kind of wall or resistance or obstacle, what that means to us today is like, oh, that means it's time to pioneer again. It's time to innovate. Like that's our signal that we're on to something. And I know you probably have lessons learned in entrepreneurship. It's, whenever you hit that resistance, that means you're on to something. And that is just, it's just so true. And so when we figure it out, or, we created these trust and safety algorithms when we knew it was going to happen one day, somebody was going to come onto the site and try to do something bad. And and it happened, and we caught it, and we built a system quickly to catch it better the next time. And then we kept building it, and it got better and better and better. And then suddenly the US government, when they're trying to change the US laws around the SEC laws and all that stuff, they're coming to us like, hey, give us your algorithms. We're like, it's like, well, if A, you don't want to do that, because the moment you publish them, then the fraudsters will, back into it. But that was just a moment of when you build something really important and you figure it out and you turn every challenge into an obstacle to it's not an obstacle, it's just an inconvenience to move around. And then you figure it out and you keep figuring it out. And then suddenly everyone, everybody just kind of takes for granted that crowdfunding kind of always existed when it didn't 8 years ago, or 6 years or whatever. There's just a lot of satisfaction that doing the hard work every day, the beating your head up against these little challenges and figuring it out actually pays off. So I would say that's just really satisfying to see. And we're on it again now with figuring out manufacturing and China and all that kind of stuff. It's this huge opportunity, hugely challenging, but the most exciting thing, because if we can make manufacturing more transparent and we can make it more empowering and serving the many and not the few, that's huge change.
We had one more question. Okay.
Hey, hello. My name is Thomas, and I run an Indiegogo campaign.
Congrats.
And just one feedback is that first I wanted to launch the campaign on Kickstarter, and I wanted to meet them for them to explain me how to do, and finally they definitively didn't want to meet me. So I contacted your team, and they wanted to meet us. So we meet them for 2 hours in your headquarters, and finally we ended up to give you a lot of money because we run a successful campaign. So you keep going with that. And also during the campaign, during the marketing, we talked to many people about Indiegogo, and no one could pronounce the name correctly. So I just wanted to know where this name came from.
Well, thank you. Well, I should mention that the second one of the second values we have is empowerment. So we are focused on scaling education, scaling empowerment, making sure everybody feels equipped and ready, because that's part of getting entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs. Is sometimes confidence is the biggest hurdle to get over, or just someone to talk to. And so that's why you experienced. That was intentional on our part, is to make ourselves available to help people, because that's really what didn't exist before. The name came from my co-founder, Eric, our original CTO, who built the very first version of the site. And we didn't have a name for the longest time, so we came up with a project name, which was horrible, and no one could remember it. It sounded like a bad word. So one day we had a reporter say, hey, can I write about you? And we didn't even have a product yet, and we were freaking out. It was the first piece of press we'd ever gotten. And we're we have to have a better name. And we didn't have a name for him, and so we published this horrible project name. And so we said, that's it, we got to come up with a name. And he was writing, I was in business school, we were in business school at the time, and he was riding his bike to class. And we knew we wanted a name that was all about being active, it should feel like we're all in motion together. It's ideas coming together with their communities and making things happen. And we also want to celebrate the concept of independent ideas. You don't need to be in a big company to make your idea happen. It can come from anywhere. And so he was, we actually used to have the tagline, like, make independent happen. Like, we thought it was so good. That was like our first tagline. And the name came when he was thinking, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the club in LA called Whiskey A Go-Go. It's a very fun, active club to celebrate independent musicians. And so he put the word independent with go-go, and he likes to say he kind of slept on it for a whole 24 hours before he shared it, which is true. He's a very thoughtful guy. And then he shared it with Slava and I. I was not a fan at first. I was like, people are going to think we're like a platform for go-go dancing, and while I love go-go dancing, I think we're going to be more than go-go dancing. It was just like all my judgment came, and we're like, well, let's kind of drink our own Kool-Aid here. Let's just go crowdsource it. And so we put it out to the world and got feedback, and everybody from my mother to my hipster little brother like loved it. So we're like, okay, that's our name. I was wrong. The world is right. See what happens when you take the gatekeeper out of the process and you empower the world? Great things happen. So
Nice story. Well, thank you for your time. I think that's all we have, but thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good luck with your work.